Alright, on this part of the video I want to show what I've done to improve the motor mount, which I think is pretty inadequate in the Skywalker. What they want you to do is use this single piece of plywood glued in, and if you do that, you screw the motor into the front, screws are in the back, and you glue this up against the motor mount wall. You'll never be able to change the motor if a motor fails. I don't like permanently affixing things to begin with, but and also this is my second Skywalker. I've crashed my first Skywalker 3 times, more or less into trees, and each time I did, the motor ripped right out. First time it just ripped apart this piece of plywood. The hot glue kept part of it in place and the rest of it just ripped out. So I tried strengthening it the third time, and the result was when I went into a tree, well, I'll show you what I did. This was the motor mount. I have a back piece of 3/8 inch plywood and a front piece of plywood, and I screwed the motor in to the front of the plywood with screws that were long enough such that they extended into the back piece, and attempted to glue it into the frame here. Now this ripped apart Skywalker is not a result of the crash. It was in a lot better shape than this, but I had to do a lot of ripping apart to get things out and unglue things that I had glued in. Made things kind of a mess. So I'm still. I noticed when it ripped out, all that was keeping the motor in was this bit of styrofoam here and here. The glue that I used, I think I used epoxy along here, didn't really hold it in too well. So I wanted a further improvement in that. I am continuing this approach with my second Skywalker here, and I will take this apart, move the top half of the fuselage out. I've got two. I will use this piece as a filler, as they want you to do. And oops, but I cut a notch here on both sides of the fuselage to fit these which I cut out. How do you cut out pieces of wood like that? Well, I use my handy dandy Milwaukee hole saw, 2.5 inch. Could have been a little bit bigger to fit it, but put this in your drill and you can drill out nice circular pieces of wood. I used, like I say, 3/8 inch plywood, and then you have to sand it down. So that's how I made these 3/8 inch pieces of plywood to fit the right size. I did on this one, which goes inside, I didn't make a perfect circle. I cut it near the edge, leaving a small amount because I did not want the bottom of the piece of wood to extend into the slot where the motor wires had to go. So I cut that off a little bit. I cut it off at the edge so that part was flat, and it will go in like this. And I'll do the same thing as I did before, but now what about the whole thing of ripping out? Well, where this just ripped away even though I had all this stuff, I had a little bit more strength, and I drilled a hole down through here and extended it down. It came out about here. I actually had to trim this with an X-Acto The angle was such it came out, but that's okay. I wanted to be able to be able to put glue in this slot anyway. And I used a piece of carbon rod cut to the right length. And then I glued it down in, and actually I used two types of glue. I used hot glue at the bottom where I could use it to build up where it was cut away, and epoxy at the top, 5-minute epoxy. Hard to get hot glue down in here also. And if I used hot glue for the whole thing, I just felt like the hot glue would start to congeal before I can get it all the way in. So I've put these rods on both halves. Here's the other half, and here's the rod there, and also cut away a little bit, sliced it so I could put glue in here and hold it in. So we'll see if that adds more strength. Of course, the best solution is just not to crash into trees. And that will be my plan for my second Skywalker. I spent too much time on the paint job and on everything else to crash it. So I think I'm not going to crash anymore. But anyway, that's what I've done for my motor mount and to strengthen it.